Thanks for introducing. Very honored and happy to give a lecture here. Today I'm going to talk about the development of modern Chinese punctuation and challenges in typography. This is my master's research topic. And I remember when I was introducing my topic to all my classmates in Reading, everyone was like, I didn't know China has punctuation. I think probably in most of people's head when mentioned about Chinese text, it's have this strong image, no punctuation at all. But actually in current use, it looks like this. So in most of cases, we're using horizontal typesetting now, but the vertical one we're still using it. So yeah, now I'm going to introduce about it. Punctuation is essential for reading text and expressing the accurate meaning of a sentence. The Chinese system of punctuation has evolved over a long period of time. It has gone through many technological challenges, such as handwriting, woodblock printing, metal type printing, and then eventually digital. During its evolution, some challenges developed in typography. This talk is divided into two parts. First, I will talk about how Chinese punctuation system developed. Then it will show an analysis from the sequence of encoding, typeface, and typography, describing the problem that arise in the current use of typography and suggest some solutions. So I think I will talk about so many content about encoding and typeface, but this room is all about the typography. I believe it's important for every typographer to know what happened during the encoding process and what happened when we typeface designers make typefaces and what are the correct typefaces, how to use them in typesetting. Before the main talk, I need to introduce a term, which is Chinese character. So in Chinese, we call it Hanzi. Zi means character, and Han is actually one of the biggest ethnic groups name, which is the biggest one in China from around 6600 BC to the present. But there are so many other scripts are or were used in China. So I think all of them we can call it Chinese characters. So in order to differentiate them, I prefer to call that one. It's just called Hanzi. Let's start the main part. From pre-Qing period, there was no clear definition of punctuation. Many scholars believe people started using the marks, for example, hook-like marks, lines, or spaces from Shang Dynasty, which is a dynasty people wrote on bones and used the oracle bone script. So we can see there's a long line dividing the sentence, and on the picture there is a piece of oracle bone. The hook mark can also be seen in Chinese bronze inscription in Shang and Zhou dynasties, which was called Judou, later in Han dynasty. This is the hook mark. With the introduction and development of printing technology, traditional punctuation was widely used in Song Yuan and Ming dynasties. The usage of Judou marks in printing started from Yu family in Jian'an. We can see on the left hand this picture, there are so many circles and they are all called Judou marks. And later in Ming dynasty, there were specific jobs only for marking the book. And on the right is the official document of Ming government. It had circle marks in red. In Qing dynasty, people have more access to books, unlike only high literacy readers who have access previously. Therefore, the use of Judou expanded. At the end of Qing Dynasty, which is around 19th century, printing technology from Europe was introduced to China. However, the real punctuation reform came later by some Chinese scholars with a background of studying abroad. These are two Chinese books at the time: a Chinese monthly magazine, which is the first journal, and it still is in Judo there, and a dictionary of Chinese language, which was the first book printed in horizontal writing direction. China has some imported punctuation marks. Between 1892 and 1911, a group of academics began to recognize the challenges of studying Hanzi. To encourage everyone to learn Hanzi and increase literacy, they made an effort to build a different linguistic system. Since they had previously studied in Europe and Japan, the scholars adapt Latin script and kana to indicate how to pronounce Hanzi. Additionally, some punctuation was imported during this time. One of the main figures in this reformist movement, Wang Bingyao, published Pinyin alphabet in 1896 and developed a punctuation system. A similar punctuation system was written in Chinese alphabet Beijing Qieying transcription textbook by Lu Zhuanzhang in 1906. The difference between these two systems is the quotation mark. So Wang borrowed a quotation mark from Japanese text and Lu borrowed from Latin script, and both of them are used for vertical typesetting. After the movement of reforming the punctuation system, pronunciation system, in 1915, the New Culture movement happened. The symbolic publication of this movement, New Youth, still used Judo in their volume 1. Later, they made the rule of punctuation used in this journal in volume 7 in 1919. In the same year, in April, the lead scholars of this movement presented the government with the bill to introduce new form of punctuation. The Chinese Ministry of Education released it in February 1920 and instructed that it would be implemented throughout the country. This was the first official punctuation-related document filled with the government. In 1949, the People's Republic of China was established in order to unify the usage throughout the massive country. In 1951, the General Administration of Publication published the document called Use of Punctuation Marks. Document was based on vertical typesetting. It gives example of how punctuation was commonly used at the time and provided advice on how to typeset and write punctuation with a good layout. In 1960s, the Hanzi writing direction changed from vertical to horizontal. As a result, a new document had to be updated by the government. They revised the draft in 1990 and released in 1995. The most recent version was released in 2011. So throughout the years, the number of punctuation marks rose from 12 to 11. Beyond that, there have been some small changes in nomenclature and form in over 100 years. So these are the 17 punctuation marks in current use. And the first category is pause or stop punctuation marks. It is used to pause or end sentences to indicate the tone of the text. We have full stop, quotation, question marks, and so on. The second category is indication punctuation marks. This type of punctuation emphasizes the distinctive meaning of or function of the word in certain sentences. We have quotation marks, brackets, and so on. So after have a brief idea of the evolution of Chinese punctuation, let's focus on the present and see what challenges have appeared in current application. So we first analyze from the perspective of encoding. China published a document known as Chinese Internal Coding Specification, abbreviated GBK, in 1995. In mainland China, it is only the encoding standard document. According to GBK, the code point of middle dot and quotation marks are the same in Hanzi and Latin script. The double with dash is two M dash combined together, and the Chinese ellipsis is two Latin ellipses combined together. But the forms in two script are actually so different, and it will cause a lot of problem. For example, the double with dash I showed on the screen and the Chinese ellipses, they are all in the wrong form or wrong position. So let's have a look at ellipses first. The position of Latin script ellipsis is on the baseline and had 3 dots, but for Hanzi we have 6 dots and position in the middle. Unicode 14.0 was aware of this issue of different position and suggests to use this math symbol to change to the Latin ellipsis for Hanzi. But there are two problems. One is Chinese punctuation need to follow GBK encoding standard, and GBK doesn't have this math symbol. Another one is by the nature is a math symbol but not a punctuation mark, so this issue still exists. And next, let's look at the double with dash. Since the nature of input involves correlation between the keyboard encoding and characters, the current encoding result has a direct impact on the experience of using the input method. In the case of double with dash, there are two models to make it visible on digital devices now. One is the use of two M dashes, and that will appear when you press this shift and minus key on your keyboard. It will show just automatically show two M dash combined together. And on your phone, you just tap this M dash twice. And another way is use this one. I call it the ideal double with dash because by the nature of this punctuation, it should be one thing but not two glyphs combined together. But the use of this ideal one is very, very rare because when Unicode realized this problem and add this ideal one into the Unicode chart, everyone already have the habit of use this combined together as one. So, and the input method hasn't updated related to this, so this issue still exists. Next, we are talking about the quotation marks. So on the Chinese keyboard, we have a key to switch language. If the code point is separate, for example, like full stop, we just simply switch language to Chinese and then press the same key we tap for like English, Latin script, full stop, and it will show totally different result. But quotation marks share the code point. Let's say, for example, you use a font only have the quotation marks for Latin script, and no matter how much effort you put on switching language, it will just come out the same result. So this is the problem of sharing code points punctuation marks. And then this one is also a bit chaos one. So for our Hanzi character, we write inside the square. And when we describe the width of it, we just say like full width or half width. And for this line break mark in the GBK encoding standard, we only have the full width one. But then in our punctuation standard, it said it should only occupy half width. So these two documents, they don't match together. And also, no matter like how if you change your input method language or not, it will just show the same result, which is the one used for Latin script. So this is also one share code point punctuation. And the problem mentioned about how long existed and a result of various factors from the perspective of encoding. However, they cannot be resolved because the current character set is backward compatible and the large amount of historical data does not allow incompatible updates to the character set. So we can only show from typeface design and typography design. So how do we do that from typeface design, or from a typographer's point of view? How do we judge if this typeface is having a correct punctuation? A recommended way is to make localized form for this sharing code punctuation. I list 15 text typefaces here, which are the most popular text typefaces made by Google, Adobe, Apple, and other type foundries in China to check the most commonly occurring mistake, ellipses and double slash. So we can see these 5 typefaces. The Chinese ellipsis is on the baseline, and 5 of them have a common point. It's they are multi-script type family, or their target market is just international market. So they just share the punctuation with Latin, but doesn't have the localized form. And then we can also say the break double with slash here. And we can see more in display typefaces. Before we talk about how to make localized form, let's have a summary of sharing code point punctuation marks. So we have middle dot, quotation marks, line break mark, and also can count ellipses. They can be roughly divided into 2 categories, those that need to change the form and those that need to change the position. Quotation mark belong to the change the form category compared to the one used in Latin script. The one for Hanzi is bigger and occupy more space. Line break mark belong to the change the position category because this punctuation is not very commonly used in Chinese text. So most of Chinese typefaces, they just use the one for Latin. And we can also say, because it's all aligned with Latin script, we can see the line break mark is slightly higher compared to the Hanzi character. So what we do is a bit extend a little bit so it looks better for both script. And then is the middle dot. Middle dot, we can see the first image. The middle dot is half width and the position looks balanced with the Hanzi character. And then we move the same one to that Sala, and it just creates half width, creates more space for Latin script, and it looks slightly higher. So the second image we just change according to the Latin script, and both of them, they just have their own punctuation marks. Yeah, this is the little summary of the section I just taught. Then we look at the double with slash. So a very common way to make double with slash now is just use zero spacing M dash. In most of cases, it will make the double with slash connect together. But when your M dash have slightly a bit angle and it's just break in the middle, and except this, there are other 2 issues. One is if we turn off the prohibition rule function in InDesign or Illustrator and use justify alignment, it will just break in the middle. And then the second is this M dash and double dash is too close to the character letter or number next to it. So a good example is Noto. This Noto sounds simplified Chinese, and it's had this CCMP open type feature, and it allows this to dash alternative to this ideal double dash, and in the same condition, it won't break in the middle. And you can also just adjust the spacing, the distance between this punctuation mark and the character. So except the localization problem, type designers should also consider the placement of punctuation. Before explaining why, I'll introduce these two rules need to follow. One is the prohibition rules for line start or end. It's just like some punctuation marks you can't use in the beginning of the line or the end of the line. And the second one is punctuation compression. So let's see here. This book title mark is supposed to you put on the side of the square, but this one compared to others, it towards a bit center. And if you use the compression function in Adobe software, by default, if you squeeze it, it's squeezed from the side. So you can see after I use this function, the book title mark is too close to the comma compared to like the other lines. And yeah, this punctuation, they have the same problem. Except that, another thing I need to mention is different regions have different standard, so their punctuation are used in the position in this different way. For Taiwan and Hong Kong, for traditional Chinese, the punctuation is put in the center, but you can never use this one for simplified Chinese in mainland China. There are some exceptions. For example, display typefaces, if you want to express the classical flavor or your revival typeface, maybe you can use a traditional way to deal with your punctuation. But except this, you need to follow the rule. And I think both of these kind of typefaces shouldn't appear in any educational places. Otherwise, it will just confuse people. Finally, we talk about from the perspective of typesetting in DTP application. So, these are the two rules I mentioned before, and I categorize them to two. One is the typography rules that must be followed. Another one can be followed flexibly. So this prohibition rule in Adobe software, actually it works together with the compression function. So we can see example B, because we want to avoid that comma appear in the beginning of the line. So we use the prohibition rule function, and it just squeeze the quotation marks and squeeze comma in half width and make it not appear in the beginning of the line. And actually, in our daily life, examples of not following this prohibition rule is quite common. We can see in this mobile game or even in Type Foundry's specimen. It's Japanese text, but they also have this prohibition rule. So it's a really tiny thing, but it just shows people don't pay much attention on this. And it's obviously this wrong way to deal with punctuation. And then this is the punctuation compression function. And the reason we compress punctuation just want to make the text look better. For example, like the example A, the second line, it had too much white space there. So in example B, we just compress the punctuation and make these 4 lines align together. But both of example A and B, they are all acceptable, and designers can actually just choose how much I want to compress the punctuation by their own choice. It's totally different than the prohibition rule I mentioned. So this is the punctuation rule we can follow flexibly. Yeah, but let's make an overall summary. The Chinese punctuation we can see now experienced a long developing process. During its evolution through the reform period, the form of punctuation marks was influenced by other countries while retaining and creating localized characteristics that are suitable for China. During the early stages of digital encoding, there was considerable confusion as the uniqueness of Chinese punctuation wasn't properly considered, which led to issues like mixed use of code points. Later, when people want to update, it was too late to resolve these issues at the encoding level, and the only solution was through typefaces and typesetting. Type designers and typographers should understand those encoding problems, the open type feature, and the typesetting rules we need to follow. In this way, when typesetting bilingual text, we can avoid punctuation mistakes and improve layout quality. Punctuation in paragraph can only function well when each level assumes responsibility for its duty. Thanks for listening.